Every time she teleports, she lands right on top of me, vertical bar. It was just another boring Tuesday morning when my entire life changed forever. I was standing in my tiny kitchen waiting for my coffee to brew, scrolling through my phone like I did every single day. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of the coffee maker doing its thing. I lived alone in this small place downtown, working from home as a data analyst. Nothing exciting ever happened to me. That was about to change in the most bizarre way possible. One second I was standing there peacefully, and the next second someone literally fell from nowhere and crashed right into me. We both went down hard, sliding across the kitchen floor. My coffee mug shattered. Hot coffee went everywhere, and I had no idea what just happened. When I looked up, there was a woman lying next to me, looking just as shocked as I felt. She had dark curly hair, wide eyes full of panic, and she was breathing like she'd just run a marathon. Before I could even say a word, before I could ask her who she was or how she got into my locked apartment, she just vanished. Gone. Disappeared into thin air like she was never there. I sat on my kitchen floor, soaked in coffee, my heart pounding like crazy, wondering if I'd just lost my mind. I checked every corner of my apartment. The door was still locked. The windows were closed. There was no way anyone could have gotten in or out. I spent the rest of that day trying to convince myself it didn't happen. Maybe I was working too hard. Maybe I needed more sleep. Maybe the stress was finally getting to me. I cleaned up the mess, changed my clothes, and tried to get back to work. But I couldn't focus. My hands were shaking every time I remembered the feeling of someone appearing out of nowhere and crashing into me. 3 days passed, and I almost had myself convinced it was just a weird hallucination. I was sitting at my desk typing up a report for a client, completely focused on my work. Then it happened again. The same woman appeared out of thin air and landed directly on my keyboard. My laptop went flying, papers scattered everywhere, and we both ended up in a tangled mess on the floor. This time, I got a better look at her face. She looked terrified, confused, and she kept saying sorry over and over again. I tried to grab her arm, tried to ask her to wait and explain, but she vanished again in the blink of an eye. That's when I knew I wasn't crazy. This was really happening. A woman who could appear and disappear was somehow targeting my apartment, and more specifically, she was targeting me. Why me? What did I do? I had so many questions and zero answers. I started keeping a notebook by my side all the time, writing down every detail I could remember. The time of day, where in the apartment it happened, what I was doing, how long she stayed before vanishing. Over the next 2 weeks, it happened 7 more times. 7 times this stranger fell into my life and then disappeared. She landed on me while I was sleeping, and I woke up screaming, desperate. She appeared during a video call with my boss, and I had to quickly turn off my camera and make up some excuse about technical difficulties. The worst one was when I was taking a morning routine in the bathroom, and she appeared right there. We both screamed so loud the neighbors probably heard us, and she was gone in less than a second. But the embarrassment stayed with me for days. My best friend kept telling me I needed help. He thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Maybe he was right, but deep down, I knew this was real. The broken laptop was real. The bruises from falling were real. The coffee stains on my carpet were definitely real. I started researching everything I could find about teleportation, quantum physics, parallel universes, anything that might explain what was happening. Nothing made sense. I was exhausted. I couldn't sleep properly because I never knew when she'd appear. I couldn't relax in my own home. I couldn't focus on work. My whole life was falling apart because of these random visits from a stranger who could teleport. But I also noticed something important during these brief moments. She looked as scared and confused as I felt. This wasn't something she was doing on purpose. Whatever was happening, she was just as much a victim as I was. That realization changed everything. Instead of being angry or scared, I became determined to find answers. If she couldn't control this, if she was stuck in this pattern just like me, then maybe we could figure it out together. I just needed to find a way to talk to her before she vanished again. I came up with a plan that seemed simple, but might actually work. I spent an entire evening making large signs with my phone number written in huge letters. I put them up all over my apartment, on every wall, near every spot where she'd appeared before. Each sign said the same thing in big, bold letters that couldn't be missed. Please text me before you disappear. We need to talk about this. I even added a second line that said, I promise I'm not angry. I just want to understand. Buzz. Then I waited. For 2 whole days, nothing happened. But I started wondering if maybe it was over, if whatever strange connection we had was broken. Part of me felt relieved, but another part felt disappointed. I'd gotten so used to expecting her that the silence felt weird. But on the 3rd day, while I was sorting through my laundry, it happened again. Best. She appeared right in the middle of my living room and stumbled into my laundry basket. This time was different, though. Instead of immediately panicking and vanishing, she looked around and saw the signs. Her eyes went wide as she read them. I stayed very still, afraid that any sudden movement would scare her away. She looked at me, then back at the signs, then pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She took a quick photo of my number, and I could see her hands trembling. Then, just like always, she disappeared. My heart was racing. I stared at my phone, willing it to buzz with a message. 1 hour passed. Then 2. I was starting to lose hope when finally my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. The message was short, but it changed everything. I'm so sorry about all of this. I don't know why I keep appearing in your apartment. I'm just as confused as you are. Can we meet somewhere public tomorrow? I really need to understand what's happening. I texted back immediately, suggesting a coffee shop downtown that was always busy. Public and safe for both of us, she agreed. And we set a time for the next afternoon. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with questions and possibilities. Who was she? Inspiration. How was she doing this? Why was she always landing on me specifically? The next day I arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early. I was so nervous I could barely sit still. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately, even though I'd only seen her in brief, chaotic moments. She looked nervous, too, her eyes scanning the room until she spotted me. Breath. She walked over slowly and sat down across from me. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before she spoke. Her name was different from what I expected, something unique that I won't share here for privacy. She told me she was 26 years old, studying advanced physics at the university. 3 months ago, she'd volunteered for a research study that was testing some new technology related to brain activity and spatial awareness. They'd promised it was completely safe, just a few hours wearing some kind of neural headset while they measured her brain waves. Everything seemed fine at first. She finished the study, got paid, and forgot about it. But 2 weeks later, strange things started happening. She'd be walking down the street and suddenly find herself on a rooftop 3 blocks away. She'd be studying in the library and suddenly appear in a parking garage. These teleportation episodes happened randomly, without warning, and she had absolutely no control over them. She'd gone back to the research facility immediately, terrified and desperate for help. The scientists were shocked and concerned. They ran more tests, tried different treatments, but nothing stopped the episodes. Desperation. They were just as confused as she was. The technology they'd used was supposed to be completely harmless. Best. Whatever had happened to her wasn't supposed to be possible. But here's where it got even stranger. She told me that most of her teleportation episodes took her to random places around the city, sometimes dangerous places, like the middle of busy streets or high places where she could have fallen. She'd even appeared in the middle of the water once and had to teleport away before she drowned. But whenever she teleported to anywhere near my neighborhood, she didn't just appear somewhere random. She appeared exactly where I was, landing directly on me every single time. I told her about the research study I'd participated in 2 years ago. I'd almost forgotten about it completely. It was just some easy money for a college student. I'd answered an advertisement looking for volunteers, spent a few hours at some research facility with my head in a scanning machine, answered some questions, and left with $200 in my pocket. I never thought about it again until this moment. Her eyes went wide when I told her this. She pulled out her phone and showed me the name of the research facility where she'd done her study. It was the same place. The exact same laboratory. We both realized at that moment that this couldn't be a coincidence. For somehow, whatever they'd done to both of us had created this impossible connection between us. The next morning, she took me to meet the lead scientist from the research facility. The woman's office was filled with books, papers, and strange equipment I didn't understand. When we explained what was happening, the color drained from her face. She looked genuinely horrified. She kept saying this wasn't supposed to be possible, that their technology couldn't do this, that there must be some mistake. But she agreed to help us investigate.
Over the next few days, we spent hours at the research facility.
They ran every test imaginable on both of us. Brain scans, blood tests, physical examinations, psychological evaluations. They asked us thousands of questions about our lives, our health, our families, trying to find any connection between us that might explain this phenomenon.
I learned more about her during those long days of testing.
She loved old science fiction movies, the kind with terrible special effects that somehow made them more charming. She had a younger brother who she talked to every day. She was passionate about her research in physics and had dreams of teaching at a university someday. Despite the bizarre situation that brought us together, I found myself actually enjoying her company. She had this way of making jokes even in the most stressful moments that made everything feel less scary. The lead scientist finally called us in for a meeting after a week of testing. She had discovered something incredible. When they'd done my study 2 years ago, they'd been mapping neural patterns in the brain related to spatial awareness and consciousness. When they'd done her study 3 months ago, they'd been testing a new neural interface technology that was supposed to help people with certain disabilities. The interface was designed to interpret and enhance certain brain signals. What they discovered was that our brains had nearly identical neural signatures in a very specific region. The scientists said this was incredibly rare, like finding 2 people with the exact same fingerprint. Out of millions of people, the chance of finding 2 with this matching pattern was almost impossible. But here we were. The neural interface technology that she'd used had somehow latched onto this pattern and created what the scientist called quantum entanglement between our spatial coordinates. In simple terms, her consciousness was being drawn to my location like a magnet whenever she had a teleportation episode nearby. Her brain was literally seeking out my brain because they matched so perfectly. The scientists couldn't explain exactly how or why this created teleportation, but the connection between us was undeniable. As we spent more time together researching and testing, something unexpected happened. We became friends. Real friends. It started with small things, like grabbing lunch together between testing sessions. We'd talk about normal stuff, not just the teleportation problem. She told me about her favorite books, and I was surprised to find we'd read a lot of the same obscure science fiction novels. I told her about my work, and she actually seemed interested, asking questions that showed she was really listening. We started texting each other even when we weren't at the research facility. Funny memes, random thoughts, updates about our days. The power bodies still happened, but they felt less scary now. When she appeared in my apartment, we'd just laugh about it. She'd apologize. I'd help her up if she'd knocked something over, and we'd chat for a minute before she had to leave. One night, we were at my apartment going over some research papers the scientist had given us. We were trying to understand the technical explanations, though most of it was way over our heads. She was sitting on my couch, papers spread everywhere, when she suddenly got quiet. Back. I looked over and saw her staring at one of the diagrams with this intense focus. She said something that stuck with me. She said that before all this happened, her life was pretty ordinary and kind of lonely. She studied all the time, didn't have many close friends, and never did anything unexpected. The teleportation had been terrifying at first, and she wouldn't wish it on anyone. But meeting me, becoming friends, having someone who truly understood what she was going through, that part was actually kind of amazing. I realized I felt the same way. My life had been routine and predictable before she literally crashed into it. Bare. I worked, ate, slept, repeated. I had friends, but no one I felt really close to. Despite all the chaos and stress, these past few weeks had been the most interesting and meaningful of my entire life. I'd found a real connection with someone, even if it came about in the strangest way possible. The scientist had been working on a potential solution for weeks. She called it a counter interface, a device that could theoretically break the neural entanglement between us. It looked like a modified version of the headset from the original experiment, with additional components and wiring. She explained that if it worked, it would sever the connection between our brain patterns and hopefully stop the random teleportation episodes completely. But there were risks. Big risks. The technology was experimental, built on theories they couldn't fully test. It might stop the teleportation completely, which would be good. But it might also make the episodes worse, more frequent, more unpredictable. Or it might not work at all and just cause other problems they couldn't anticipate. The scientist was honest with us about the uncertainty. Bow. She couldn't guarantee anything. We had to make a decision. Keep living with the unpredictable teleportation, or take a risk on an experimental treatment that might make things better or worse. It was a heavy choice. I could see the stress on her face as she thought about it. She'd been dealing with this for months now, appearing in random places, never knowing when or where she'd end up next. The episodes had cost her so much already. She'd had to drop some of her classes because she couldn't reliably attend. She'd lost a part-time job because she kept disappearing without explanation. We spent a lot of time talking about it. Late-night phone calls where we went through every possibility. Coffee shop meetings where we made lists of pros and cons. She was leaning toward trying the counter interface. The uncertainty of her current situation was wearing her down. She wanted her normal life back, even if getting there meant taking a risk. Then something happened that changed everything. We were at my apartment one evening going over the consent forms for the procedure one last time. She was sitting at my desk, reading through the technical language, when another teleportation episode hit her. But this time was completely different from all the others. I saw her start to fade, that shimmer in the air that I'd learned to recognize. Without thinking, I reached out and grabbed her hand, maybe trying to anchor her, to keep her from disappearing. But instead of her vanishing alone, I felt this strange pulling sensation. Bah. The room blurred around me. My stomach dropped like I was falling, and suddenly we were both standing on the roof of my apartment building. We both just stood there in shock, still holding hands, the city lights spread out below us.
She teleported before, hundreds of times, but I'd never gone with her.
We'd always been separate. This was completely new, bare, completely unexpected, and honestly, completely terrifying. My legs were shaking, and I had to sit down on the roof before I fell over. After we both calmed down enough to think clearly, we made our way back downstairs to my apartment the normal way, using the stairs. Desperation. We immediately called the scientist and told her what happened. She was stunned. She had us come to the facility first thing the next morning for emergency testing. The tests revealed something fascinating. The entanglement between us wasn't static. It was evolving, growing stronger over time. The scientists theorized that the more time we spent together, the more our neural patterns synchronized, the deeper the connection became. What started as her being pulled to my location was developing into something more, a genuine quantum link where we could potentially affect each other's spatial position. Over the next few weeks, we experimented carefully with this new development. Always with the scientist monitoring us, always with safety precautions in place. We discovered that I could sometimes sense when she was about to have an episode. I'd feel this weird tingling in my head, and if I concentrated hard enough, I could somehow anchor her, keep her from teleporting at all. It didn't work every time, but it worked often enough to be significant. Even more amazing, we found that if we were both concentrating, both willing it to happen, she could bring me with her when she teleported.
We practiced in controlled conditions, teleporting from one room to another in the research facility.
It was exhausting and didn't always work, but when it did, it was incredible. The random chaotic problem that had turned both our lives upside down was slowly becoming something we could understand and maybe even control. The scientist was fascinated. She said we were witnessing something that shouldn't be possible according to everything science understood about physics and consciousness. But here we were, proving that the impossible was actually happening. We had another decision to make. We could still try the counter interface and attempt to break the connection completely. Go back to our normal, separate lives. Or we could postpone that treatment and continue exploring this ability, learning to control it, understanding it better. The scientist supported whatever we chose. She saw the scientific value in studying us further, but she also cared about our well-being and happiness. We decided to wait on the counter interface. It felt like the right choice for both of us. This connection between us, as strange and unexpected as it was, had become something important. We weren't just two random people stuck in an unfortunate situation anymore. We were partners in something extraordinary, something that might actually be a gift instead of a curse. The scientist agreed to continue working with us, documenting everything, helping us understand and develop this ability safely. She applied for research grants, wrote papers about our case, and turned our situation into a legitimate scientific study. We became her full-time research subjects, which actually paid pretty well, and gave us both the flexibility to focus on understanding this phenomenon. The training process was slow and often frustrating. Teleportation took an enormous amount of mental energy and concentration. In the beginning, we could only do it once or twice a day before becoming completely exhausted. We'd both end up with splitting headaches and need to sleep for hours. But gradually, like building muscle, we got stronger. We got better at it. We learned that physical contact made the connection stronger. Holding hands made teleportation easier and more stable. We discovered that we could teleport to places we'd both been to before more easily than completely new locations. Familiar places had clearer mental images, which somehow made the process smoother. We practiced teleporting to the coffee shop where we first met, to the research facility, to various spots around the city we both knew well. There were failures too. Plenty of them. Once, we tried to teleport to a park across town and ended up in someone's backyard instead, scaring a family having a barbecue. Another time we aimed for the university library and materialized in a storage closet. We got stuck in there for 20 minutes before someone heard us yelling and let us out. We learned to laugh at these mistakes instead of getting discouraged. My best friend, who'd thought I was losing my mind months ago, finally got to meet her. I showed him one of our practice sessions at the research facility where we teleported from one side of the room to the other. His jaw literally dropped. After that, he became our biggest supporter, always asking about our progress and treating our ability like it was the coolest thing in the world. Her family was harder to tell. She eventually explained everything to her younger brother, who thought it was awesome. Her parents were more skeptical and worried, concerned that the experiments might be dangerous. But when she teleported right in front of them during a family dinner, appearing and disappearing and then reappearing, they had to believe it. They came around eventually, seeing how happy and excited she was about the research. Fast. 6 months after that first chaotic morning in my kitchen, we were preparing for our biggest test yet, a long-distance teleportation attempt. We'd been working up to this, gradually increasing the distances we could travel. We'd gone from room to room, then building to building, then across neighborhoods. Now we wanted to try something really ambitious, teleporting from the research facility to a specific location 50 miles away. The scientist had set up monitoring equipment at both locations. We had a whole team of researchers watching, ready to help if something went wrong. My friend was there for moral support. Her brother came too. Everyone was nervous but excited. We stood in the center of the research facility, holding hands, both of us focusing as hard as we could on our destination. A scenic overlook we'd visited together several times to practice visualization. We'd studied photographs of it, memorized every detail. We both closed our eyes and concentrated on that exact spot, the feeling of the wind there, the view of the valley, the texture of the wooden railing. The pull started, that familiar sensation of reality bending around us. But this time it was stronger, more intense than anything we'd experienced before. For a moment, I thought we'd made a mistake, that we'd pushed too far. Then suddenly, we were there. Standing at the overlook, 50 miles from where we started, hand in hand, both of us breathing hard but grinning like crazy. We'd done it. But we'd actually done it. The monitoring equipment confirmed we'd teleported the full distance in an instant. The research team was celebrating through our phones, their excited voices coming through the speakers. We just stood there for a while, looking out at the view, both of us realizing how far we'd come. But looking back, I still can't believe how much my life changed because of one random Tuesday morning. I went from being a lonely guy working from home living the same boring routine every day, to being part of something incredible, something that science couldn't fully explain, something that connected me to another person in a way that was deeper than normal friendship. She still occasionally lands on me unexpectedly. Best, her control isn't perfect and probably never will be. Sometimes she'll appear in my apartment when I'm not expecting it, crash into my furniture, and we'll both just laugh about it like it's an inside joke. Because at this point, it kind of is. Those chaotic accidents brought us together and changed both our lives forever. We don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday we'll understand this ability completely. Maybe we'll find others like us. Maybe this is just the beginning of discovering something bigger about human consciousness and the nature of reality itself. Or maybe we'll always be a unique case. Two people who stumbled into an impossible connection. Either way, I'm grateful for that first collision, for every awkward teleportation accident, for the friendship we built through all the chaos. What started as the most bizarre and frightening experience of my life turned into the best thing that ever happened to me. And I wouldn't change a single moment of it.